Hello, and welcome to Secrets of the Evil Overlord List with your host, that's me, Jeff Mach. Dark Lord. Is there a difference between a Dark Lord and an Evil Overlord? Yes, no, maybe, sometimes, not a part of this video, but a good question for later. Right. So depending on who you are, what your background is, and how you're seeing this video, you could be asking any number of things right now. You might be asking, Jeff, what is the Evil Overlord List? Or, Jeff, everyone knows what the Evil Overlord List is. What are you doing? Or, very possibly, who the hell are you? Or, depending, perish, villain! Why won't you perish? As for those questions in reverse order, I won't perish because my staying alive annoys my enemies to unparalleled ends. And while I have a number of plans in place for what happens after that, at the moment I'm really just enjoying this part. As for who I am an author. Check out my books Diary of a Dark Lord, or I Hate Your Prophecy, or maybe I Hate Your Time Machine, or Villains, Villainy, and Villainpunk on Amazon or at your local library or wherever things of villainous intent and general thought crime may be sold, stolen, eaten by bears, whatever you happen to prefer. As for the Evil Overlord List, for those who don't know what it is, I'm going to give a very quick overview. The Evil Overlord List as a thing is copyright 1996-1997 by Peter Anspach. Anspach? If anyone knows how to pronounce Peter's name, let me know. And he writes, if you enjoy it, feel free to pass it along or post it anywhere, provided that 1, it is not altered in any way, and 2, this copyright notice is attached. Now, as I am deconstructing, or really demystifying, or very possibly reconstructing and remystifying the Evil Overlord List, I'm not entirely sure that it's utterly essential to read the copyright notice, but I figured I'd give you a couple of pieces from that site. I'm at eviloverlord.com/lists/overlord.html. That's my reference point for this. Peter writes that this Evil Overlord list grew out of the exchanges on what is now the Star Trek mailing list, defunct email list here, beginning in 1994. Yes, friends, there was in fact a 1994. It has not always been 2020 or 2021 or 2019. There was a time before that, it's just no one can remember it. And they're talking about, of course, various cliches, tropes, various ways that people, well, monsters, some of whom are people, some of whom are monstrously person-like, various powerful, singular Dark Lord type beings have made dumb mistakes in media, particularly movies, and he notes here that November of 2002, he spoke to a fellow named Jack Butler, who has a list on his own website as well, and Mr. Butler is quoted as saying, "This list has its origins on the now non-existent FidoNet." If you remember FidoNet, I salute you. FidoNet science fiction and fandom email echo in a discussion regarding a sketch scene on an episode of Saturday Night Live sometime in 1990. In the sketch, several Bond villains were appearing on a talk show touting their new book, What Not to Do If You Captured James Bond. And it goes forth in that direction. I quite like the Evil Overlord list. It's been influential in my life. I read it many years ago, possibly on this website, possibly on one of the alt.science fiction news groups. don't know, but it was kicked around for many years before I myself became a full-time villain, or possibly had villainhood thrust upon me, to paraphrase Mr. Shakespeare. And since I've begun my Dark Lordery, I've been interested in explaining to you how you've all been bamboozled. Now, when I say you've all been bamboozled, don't get me wrong, I don't mean to say that you all are ignorant of the truth and I alone know the truth. I save that kind of thing for, everyone else's propaganda. My propaganda is just about villainy. I leave ridiculous and insane propaganda to, everything else you see on the internet. Mine is highly focused, highly highly reasonable propaganda. And the short version is that my concept is that all the things that are attributed to being terrible, evil overlord mistakes are not mistakes at all. Now, this comes out of a sort of personal bugaboo, wherein I am secretly a real fan of the original Ian Fleming James Bond books, in spite of the many areas which are, as we so love to say in the modern era, problematic. I still love the books as works of art and spy fiction from their time, which, viewed today, still hold up as powerful stories, and also excuses for James Bond to get hit a lot. And I feel like there are really good justifications for why, for example, James Bond is so often kept alive in the books, and so often recruited by villains, again, in the books. And honestly, if you've ever gone through the hiring process, and I'm sure this will come up again, it's hard to get good villains these days. Now, I don't want to make this first video too long, but I will note that one of my goals, and we'll see how long I can actually do this without accidentally or intentionally seeing things I'm not intending to see yet, one of my goals is to take this one idea at a time, one piece of the list, and go down the list as long as I can without pre-thinking them, without thinking it through before the video, and hopefully just in one take, so that you get my immediate thoughts and commentary. I will jump to the first here. The top 100 things I'd do if I ever became, an evil overlord. And we'll go with just number 1 for today. 1, and this is rather a famous one. My legions of terror will have helmets with clear plexiglass visors, not face-concealing ones. Now, this is a really common thought, and of course, in and of itself, it often relies on a particularly ridiculous trope, which is the long-held idea that if you have, say, 2 heroes, they will wait for a patrol of 2 guards, and with ridiculous ease, disable or destroy or knock out the 2 guards, drag them into a corner or corridor or somewhere out of the way, and re-emerge almost immediately wearing the clothing of those guards. And the more your legions of terror have sort of a mask, I don't mean necessarily a current era surgical face mask, but in general we're talking about a Cobra Commander full-out style visor, can't see through it kind of mask, or of course a Star Wars Stormtrooper sort of mask, or I was going to say a Faceless Legion kind of mask, but that's actually its own separate idea. And the thought being that if you don't know what your guards look like, you can't see them because you've decided on this particular way of framing how you want your warriors to appear, then you run the terrible risk of having someone you don't like impersonate one of your guards easily and sneak up on you and sneak into somewhere they shouldn't or get the drop on you yourself. One moment, please. Sorry. Thank you for your patience. Now I want to say both rebuttal and refutation at the same time. I can't say them simultaneously. I'm going to give just one refutation for today, and I'm not sure I might decide to give multiple refutations in the future. I think I've seen a note online saying, well, obviously I would digitally chip my guards, and that helps if you're in a high-tech setting. Well, I guess it's not high-tech anymore, is it? In fact, I feel like that was in the 2002, 2006 Casino Royale, and that was done to Bond, so it's not a new idea in the last 20 years. But it also gets past some of the other point. Okay, let's just say it's completely a weakness. What you're doing is a trade-off, and that is essential. You are trading, in this case, having guards that you can identify easily with having guards that nobody can identify easily. Now, obviously, if you make it harder for you to identify your guards, then you indeed risk the risk the possibility that someone can impersonate them with greater ease. But if you keep your guards generally faceless or have their face obscured or have their eyes obscured, they are more intimidating, more frightening. It seems like there are more of them, and the general principle of giving a sense that your guards are ubiquitous or uniform. Uniformity is not always something an evil overlord looks for, but in the concept that your power is unchallengeable, it's not necessarily bad to want your legions to appear to be a faceless, endless mass, because you want to give people the powerful impression that you are not to be messed with. It's an extension of the Tarkin doctrine, that it is more efficient to rule with the appearance, not to say also the actuality, of overwhelming force, which therefore makes concentrating power into a Death Star particularly useful, not necessarily because Death Stars are the most efficient way that someone with the Empire's technology might attempt to enforce a rule on the galaxy, a rulership on the galaxy, but rather because it's extremely convincing to have a moon-sized object that you know can destroy your planet move next to your planet. You might be able to get the same force out of conventional ships, but not the same awe-inspiring, we're all gonna die right away feeling. And that's the thing. That's on the face of it, that even if this is just a weakness, an exploitable weakness, it's also an exploitable weakness with a great deal of power and strength. And to make your guards more human is to make them more vincible, which is not just something dangerous to you, but also dangerous to your guards. The more you let others perceive their humanity, assuming they are human, or, the more you let them perceive the humanity of your guards, the more they might be able to get through to the humanity of your guards, assuming that you are doing something counter to the wishes of your guards, that your guards, deep in their hearts, would hate to be on your side. As a side note, don't do that. If you're going to be an evil monster, have guards who would like to guard an evil monster. Don't give them an immediate conflict of interest. That's just good business talking. Also, if your guards are supposed to be human, but they're not, then having them wear something that shields their faces. And by the way, this is not intended as topical. It's not intended to refer to any other kind of masking. It's just literally at the top of the list. But it's really helpful. And I am again thinking of stormtroopers, who of course don't wear masks. They wear entire helmets that cover their whole, well, the helmets don't cover the whole bodies. They have helmets which are attached to suits which cover the entire bodies all over. They're the ones who come most to mind. But also, unless all of your guards are clones, for example, which would be canonically true again in some areas of the Empire by Star Trek lore, unless that's a piece of lore that's been retconned, but if it is, I don't accept that reality, so I'm not worried about it. You probably should kind of know your guards. I mean, there are a number of ways of getting to know your guards, and yes, again, the more the discipline is completely impersonal, sure, the easier it is for people to impersonate them, but your guards should be really highly trained, and specifically trained. So someone who's not one of your guards probably wouldn't have that training, might not be able to march quite properly, turn quite properly, know where things are. You know, it would be a difficult deception to hold up. But as long as your guards are, in fact, different people underneath their protective coverings, then the people who supervise those guards probably know them. As long as they ever get things like lunch breaks, they probably talk. As long as there's anything, again, the more they're like robots, the more they don't have individual personalities or never have a chance to express those individual personalities, sure, the more they are impersonatable. But in most actual villainous situations, your guards are going to be individuals. They have relationships with each other. They have relationships with their supervisors. They may have relationships with you. You might know who they are. You know, it's not something we usually see when we're looking at an evil overlord surrounded by guards. The evil overlord doesn't usually pause at formal occasions of state, say, "Hey Melvin, how's the Lombardo today? Robinette, how's the wife?" You know? But if you're not seeing them at some formal, stiff occasion of state, if they're hanging around in the throne room and you're talking to your advisors, your friends, other people, if you've just had a sort of relaxed time before you bring in the prisoners, sure, in front of the prisoners, everyone's going to be all... But before that time, while you don't necessarily want to have too much familiarity, depending on your style of leadership, you probably talk to your guard, they probably talk to each other, and, that's harder and harder to impersonate over longer periods of time. That's without technology at all. That's without all the other ways you could use to simply offset the weaknesses of facial anonymity, technological, magical, interpersonal, or simply as part of your command structure. On top of all those things, there's just people tend to be people. They tend to relate to each other. They like each other. They don't like each other. They relate in those ways. And those who are trying to impersonate your guards are going to run into that kind of trouble. Realistically, heroes are deeply inventive. They could be in the air ducts. They could be in the closet. They could be anywhere. And you yourself ought to be endlessly creative in your ways to find and destroy the heroes. It is sometimes an arm race, but most of all, as with pretty much every aspect of being an evil overlord, it is a brain race. So try to have a better brain. Surround yourselves with those who have good brains. Have good troops who know each other. And I don't think it's really a problem to have impenetrable facial or indeed whole body armor. I think it's really got a lot of great psychological uses, and the drawbacks are actually few and far between. Sure, you hear the stories of the heroes who get away with impersonating guards, because those are the only stories that survive. I mean, the heroes who don't get away with impersonating guards, well, they're dead. So you don't really hear their stories anyway. Thank you for your time. This has been me, Dark Lord Jeff Mach, signing off. Wait, nope. This has been me talking about stuff. This is now me signing off. I'm new to the video thing. I'd ask for your forgiveness, but being a Dark Lord's... Actually, I'm sure that this will come up later. Being a Dark Lord absolutely means saying you're sorry sometimes, depending on what kind of Dark Lord you are. So, I'm sorry for any stumbles as I figure out this whole video thing, but thank you for your time and your patience, and I hope to entice you with further villainy later. Oh, find me on Twitter at @DarkLordJournal, or look up what I do at evilexpo.com, or Jeff Mach, M-A-C-H, last name Mac, so when Ellis Island had a sense of humor, Jeff Mach Writes, W-R-I-T-E-S.com. Bye all.